Welcome back for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. I'm your host, Tim Sheils, joined by my co-host and bro, Wayne Breezie Brown. This is going to be recorded and dropped on the day of Game 1 of the Celtics versus 76ers second round series. Before we kick things off and get into everything, Wayne, how we hanging today, man?
I'm doing good. It's game day.
hmm
Series 2 is about to kick off. I'm excited. And I'm ready to get down to the get down. I think the Celtics are gonna definitely come out and bring it in this game in this 7 game series.
Yeah, and I think it helps that it's a team that they're familiar with, right? Looking around the NBA before we get into it all, we saw the Warriors beat the Kings. Unfortunately, Steph Curry having an all-time performance, which is very much like Steph Curry, 50 points in a
50
game
points.
seven. Damn, you're just not going to win a basketball game if you give up a 50 burger to anybody, let alone Steph Curry. And he was the main reason why the Warriors won that game. I think that's safe to say, especially when you look at some of the other shooting charts across that team. And now you've got a matchup between the Lakers and the Warriors.
That's gonna be
Um,
good. That's good. That's
that's
good.
that's gonna be good
That's
stuff.
gonna be
That's
good.
that's gonna be a rock fight. I think the Knicks are also a rock fight. The Knicks and Heat series. The Heat took game one. However, Jimmy Butler played 43 minutes and he also rolled his ankle. I don't think we've gotten any kind of update on how severe that is,
No.
but that is worth monitoring because I think that if he's out and you've got Julius Randle who's coming back from injury, I think that series is going to go longer than expected. I think that's a 6 or 7 game series if all things play out and unfold like I think they can. Now, as for the Celtics, Celtics right now, clean bill of health. However,
I'm gonna knock on
Joel
that wood.
Embiid's yeah, you gotta knock on wood with that stuff. Um, Joel Embiid is now kind of at like the center of attention with everything going on regarding this series. So last we heard, he got an LCL strain against the Nets in their first round series in that sweep. Did not play game four. Now we're hearing more about it. Had the MRI, Doc Rivers, this was probably about a week ago at this point. Doc Rivers said that the MRI did not come back as clean as they would have hoped, worse than they expected. Shams Charania had some reports as well. Right now, as of recording, which is about 2 p.m. on Monday, Joel Embiid is listed as doubtful for tonight. He has beaten the doubtful allegations before he's played when been listed as doubtful. Um, in this situation, though, based on the injury, there's reports that it is worse than a grade one strain. And if it's worse than a grade one strain, it's going to be really, really bad. He did get a PRP injection, which is a platelet rich injection. It's platelet rich. What do they have? Platelet rich injection. So basically, they put an injection in his knee. It's different than what Kemba Walker got. Kemba Walker got stem cells. This is a little bit different. Um, Platelet rich plasma injection. That's what it is.
That's what it is. The plasma, the blood.
So they put it into his knee. And now it's just kind of a waiting game to see what happens there. He did go to shoot around, which has got some people kind of chattering. But if you look at the footage, he's not moving well. And according to some other reports, if he does play, he's probably going to be 20-30%, which is rough. Now, if you're Philly, this is going to be a tall order. You look at the rest of that roster, there's not a lot of guys that put fear in me. James Harden, notoriously not a playoff player. He does not show up well in the playoffs, has not done it consistently, especially now when you look at how he's slowed down. I do wonder to what degree he's going to actually be able to punish the Celtics. Still, that kind of sets up for a trap game. So the Celtics have to come out and play their brand of basketball. I think Atlanta kind of put them on that path based on how tough they got played in that first round series. But what are your first thoughts going into this? Like, what's immediately catching your eye? What's got your
Well, I
mind
mean,
running?
it's got to be the Embiid situation, and it's unfortunate that he's dealing with this injury. Um, but if you know Embiid like I know Embiid, he's gonna try to find a way to work through it. If I'm the Philadelphia 76ers and the report isn't what they expected it to be, I kind of would wait until they get home. I think it would be best for them, for Embiid's sake, it would be best, give it a couple of more games, see how the first 2 games go without Embiid, and then when you get home, that's a couple of more days to where he can kind of like work himself back into some type of playing shape. Imma tell you right now, the Celtics are a physical team, and with the addition of Rob Williams being back, they've been physical around the rim, and so I feel like this would only hurt Embiid even the more and do more damage to him. So, I'm not saying that because I don't want him to play. I always want the best players out there. It makes competition, great. But for Embiid, like, when it comes to health, I don't play around with health. I don't care who it's for, what team, nothing like that. It doesn't matter. I just don't like to play around with health, man. Having guys injured is just not a good thing. And if he's dealing with this injury, I mean, cool, you can question, you can say he's an Iron Man and things like that. But if this is going to damage him, to get to to get a win on tonight, because that's what Philly wants. They want to get a win. They want to get a win on the road, steal the win, take away home court advantage. And so I guess the thing that's going to catch my mind is beware of the Joel Embiid. And I don't mean by him playing. Like, beware. If he's not playing, the Celtics have to come out and do their job, right? They don't need to come out and play down to the competition and be like, "Oh, no, Embiid, we'll take, Dwayne Dedman or whoever else they're gonna start." No,
Paul
like
Reed.
Paul Reed, come out and do your job. Like, do whatever you got to do. Get this win by any means necessary. Take advantage of the fact that they're going to be. I don't know if we can say that word that starts with an H, but they're going to be without a guy, and so they got to do their job. I mean, pass the ball, rotate the ball, take the right shots. If Embiid is not playing, get to the damn bucket. Like, get inside, get as many points you can around the rim. And I think if the Celtics game plan, and I expect to see some Grant Williams, more Grant Williams than what we've seen in the first series in this particular matchup, just because of the matchup purposes.
Yeah, I mean, you figure that PJ Tucker's probably going to get some run here. I think because clearly in the last game against the Celtics, he managed to be a killer. I think overall, this game, just the vibes going into it, I think the Celtics are prepared. I listened to some of the practice interviews from the other day. Um, Jalen Brown had some comments that were pretty much like, "We have to take this team seriously." Atlanta pushed us a lot more than we expected. I think Malcolm Brogdon's comments as well. He takes the 76ers very seriously. And it's the same thing for Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla talking about how they play a little bit faster when they don't have those guys out there. And then everybody else has to be more aggressive. And he mentioned specifically Harden and Maxi. Those are the two that I would look at. I mean, right now, you look at the rest of that roster, like who really puts fear into you? You have to focus on Harden and Maxi, and to a degree, Tobias Harris. He's not the player that he was signed to be way back when they chose him over Jimmy Butler. Obviously, a decision that like Philly fans in the Philly organization, I'm sure, kicking themselves over when you look at everything that's happened over the past few years for them with Ben Simmons and all of that and how that kind of unfolded. But for the Celtics going into this, I think the biggest thing is just trying to do the things that you were doing well before, continuing to build on that. I think you hit it on the head right there with the physicality. I think playing physical, playing hard, fighting for rebounds. That was a big thing that they weren't doing for a chunk of that Atlanta series until Atlanta forced them to play that way. So I think this is kind of one of those matchups that they can take advantage of. This is a team that they went 3-1 against when Joel Embiid has played in the playoffs, he's 1-8 against them. So I think those are things that you have to consider going into this. Over the past few years, it's not been a concern for me to go against Philadelphia. I don't think it's necessarily anything to do with their talent. I just think that the Celtics have a certain air about them when they go against certain teams. Like for example, they don't like the Raptors, they don't like the Heat, they don't like the Nets, they don't like the Bucks, and they most certainly do not like the 76ers, and they play with an edge. So I'm hoping that that is something that continues, especially going into this game one. You definitely don't want to give up home court. And I agree with the sentiment. We talked about this before. I think Embiid misses the first two games. That's my opinion. I think to play him in game 2, you can go with, maybe, depending on how he's feeling. I don't know, without pulling up the report, I really don't know when the injection happened. I have to assume that it didn't happen, like, recently. I imagine it probably happened in that week of downtime because Celtics were still playing the Hawks. Nets got swept, so the 76ers had some time. I'm sure that's when he got, a second opinion and the scans and all that stuff done. And I'm sure that they moved on it pretty quickly to make sure that everything's all right or as good as it could be. But I think waiting to let Embiid get a little bit more rest would be the right move. I think rushing him back for game 1 is not only bad for Embiid, but I think it's bad for the 76ers because then you have to worry about him the entire game and worry about, do we have to worry about his workload right now? He's not looking good. And then what if you do put him out there and then it gets worse? And then I saw a report earlier, it might just be rumors, but like that there might be a partial tear in the LCL. So if you put him out there and you make it worse, you're risking a serious injury that will bleed into next season. And don't get me wrong, there's still a likelihood that that might happen. But taking a dice roll like that in game 1 seems like a bad decision. I don't know if you agree with that. It seems like you do. But if I'm Joel Embiid, I know he wants to play. If I were in his shoes, I would want to play too. He does seem like that kind of guy who plays through injuries. But I think risking it in game 1 is really, really bad idea. I think getting back home, if you can try and steal game 1 or game 2, great. But getting back home, I think you should play in game 3 because I think that's really where they're going to be able to try and turn this series, if at all. But realistically, I don't see any world where throwing Joel Embiid out there right now is going to help them other than just saying that they have Embiid out there. But like, I think they're going to abuse him on defense because he looks slow. They had him doing warmups and everything. And if he's going to play, he's going to have to play with a brace. So he's going to be even slower. I just don't, I don't see a world where that's going to go well for anyone.
Yeah, and if you know Embiid, he's gonna play. He's gonna want to play like Embiid, like the guy throwing his body out there on the floor and doing all those things. I mean, it's easier said than done. It's like, yeah, I got a brace on, but that doesn't mean mentally I'm not gonna go out and dive for a loose ball or flop or do this or do
Throws his
whatever I got
body
to do.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's him. That's what makes Embiid like so great. Probably one of the greatest centers of all time. And so you're not if the Philadelphia 76ers have to say, hey, we know we're not going to get that Embiid. And you know what? Let's take game 1. Let's put our lineup out there and they're going to come at us quick. So let me tell you so but their guards Tyrese Maxey is going to control the tempo of this game. Expect to see a lot of ball handling from James Harden, a lot of different types of shots to create. He's a shot creator, so he's going to come out there and try to take them, get the Celtics in foul trouble. I guarantee you that's their game plan. Because if you take away our bigs, like, and I feel like all of our guys are big because they're tall, sick wings. That's how we play, and that's what makes us so great when you're defending a team that's not a great 3-point shooting team getting out on the perimeter. We're long, we're big. We can get out there, we can raise our hands in the air, affect those types of shots. My issue with the Celtics is just don't leave anybody wide open. Okay, let them shoot, but don't leave them wide open. If James Harden happens to hit a shot in your face and it's far away from the rim, just toss it up to say he's just a damn good shooter. That's what he does, right? But don't let these guys control the tempo. Don't let Tyrese Maxey set the tempo of how this game is gonna go. He's young, he's fast. Now he's not as like accurate in getting to the rim and hitting the shots all the time. But the fact that he'll be able to get in there and get his body thrown into the Celtics and force these Celtics to get into foul trouble, that's going to be the key. So the Celtics have to play really smart basketball, don't play down to the competition, and rotate those guards. We have bigger guards than him. And remember I said this at the beginning, throughout the season when we were doing our show, we always struggle against fast paced teams. Like we want to slow it down, they want to speed it up. Sometimes we counter it, and then sometimes we just can't. And I'm without Embiid, this might be that time where they're just gonna come out fast, 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 fast. If they're hitting their shots, it's gonna be a long night. Now the Celtics are gonna force them to shoot. That's what we do. You're not getting in the paint. So go ahead and hit that mid range. Go ahead and hit that three. And if it goes in, it's gonna be a long night because the Celtics are gonna do the same thing. So interesting game with or without Embiid. I like us better when we play against Embiid. I'm a little bit curious to see how we're going to respond without Embiid.
Yeah, and I was just pulling up the starting lineup that they trotted out for that game for against the Nets to just sort of see what we would be looking at. And realistically, it's probably gonna be that starting duo of Harden and Maxi. Then you're gonna have Tobias Harris and PJ Tucker, and you'll have Paul Reed at center. So I'm guessing that's probably what they roll with. The only thing that I could see them doing is maybe trying to get like D'Anthony Melton in there, maybe where Jalen McDaniels. I don't know if they would do that kind of thing. I feel like that starting five is probably their best starting five that they can put together right now, Sans and Bede. So I think they roll with that. It's interesting. Do you remember Montreal Harrell
I
having
I
connections to the Celtics?
I
And
do.
he's just he okay. You know what the funny thing is about it? I'm just gonna go on a little mini rant about this because it still is hilarious to me. Because I really wanted Montreal Harrell. I
Mhm.
like him as an energy guy. I think he's great. Like off the bench, he's fantastic. The guy is a former six man of the year winner, won it with the Clippers, played for the Lakers as well. But he turned down a role with the Celtics because it wasn't what he wanted. He said
Correct.
like it wasn't going to be as big of a role as he expected, and instead he chose to go to Philly. And at the time, I was like, man, that's a good get for Philly. Like that sucks for Boston. I hate that he went to Philly. The dude got 5 minutes in a game 4 where your starting center is out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's an indictment of him or the way that they're playing. I know Doc Rivers isn't making, great adjustments. That's sort of been one big knock on him for his coaching career is the inability to make adjustments. But the fact that Montreal Harrell is not cracking that rotation like significantly, damn, dude, that sucks for you.
It does suck for him, and today would be the day where that kind of changes, right? And so, just because we're not expecting him to play, look, he's
Hmm.
an energy guy. He's a gritty guy. Like, if I had to compare him to anybody on our team, I'm trying to think who it would be. I feel like we don't have those kind of like gritty type of players anymore. The Jay Crowders and
He's like a
those.
Mook Morris. He's like a Marcus Morris kind of
Like a
player.
Mook.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
like I feel
sure.
like we just don't have those guys. I always wish we have one. I feel like every team needs one guy that just doesn't care and is gonna jump on the ball, jump on this, do this, whatever. That's who he is. We don't know what to expect tonight with Embiid being out. And so this is going to be interesting. So even for us, as we're watching the game, we're going to get it the way they want to give it to us because we just don't know. Like we really don't know. Like you said, we're used to playing them with Embiid, and it's regardless if Embiid goes for 50, 60, whatever, we find a way to overcome that, except for in that last game we played during the regular season. But we find a way to overcome it, right? We find a way to overcome it. And even in that last game, game 4 of the regular season, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the scout report says, oh, Tucker's not going to take the shot, but he was wide open. And you know what it was from? Not rebounding, Tim. It was second chance
Mhm.
points. The one area Boston seems to struggle. And I don't get it. And they just got to figure out how to rebound, and they will be fine. I don't even care about the shot selection that Boston takes because I know they got to find a way to get into the groove, and I think they come out right in game 1. But it's more like if they start missing, if they go cold, switch it up, change it up, and that's going to come down to Coach Mazzulla. Get your guys back into rotation. We know basketball is a game of runs. This is the playoffs. I don't care who's playing on their squad. You saw what happened in Atlanta. When we played Atlanta, they lost one of their best players and we got whipped. So we got beat. But at the end of the day, it's a different matchup. I like the size, the length of our players against their players. I feel like our bench trumps their bench, and we didn't talk about that. And so I don't see how the Celtics, would lay an egg in game 1.
Yeah, I think the bench thing is the biggest. I thought about that earlier because I went through the roster and I thought to myself, like, which one of these players actually like puts any kind of fear in you? And the most I can say is that Embiid does to a degree. And I know James Harden is capable of having big performances. It's just not very common in the playoffs. And I also just don't think that he's the same player. But then you look at the guard rotation that the Celtics have, and you even look at the bigs rotation now. I think I feel pretty comfortable with the bigs rotation where it's at. And it is interesting to see whether or not they go double big right out of the gate. Do they close with double bigs? Do they stagger Rob and Al so you have Rob going against guys like Montreal Harrell and maybe you start getting Grant minutes. We you mentioned that before, but like
You just got me excited.
I think Grant gets some run. Hey, look, man, I think a perfect example of what people want Grant to be is PJ Tucker.
That's
Not
it.
this version of PJ Tucker, but
No, the
prime
original.
version.
Yeah, I'll take the
Yeah.
Houston Rockets version at this point. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's who he is. Like hustle guy, make the right play, make the right read, and take the open mother freaking shot when it's given to
Yeah,
you. Like that's
open
it.
threes. Yeah.
Open threes. Take them. You can hit them. Be confident, Grant. You got this, dude. You got it. You
Yeah, and we
know?
gotta see him do that. Like, that I think that's the thing, and I think overall, his confidence got a little bit bruised during the season, and I think, the loss to the Cleveland loss is the one thing that sticks in my brain after talking about hitting both of those free throws, and that was supposed to be like a bounce back night. He had a great night up until that moment. And so I think he got a little bit derailed going into the tail end of the season, going into the postseason. And we talked about him getting some run in the Hawks game. I want to say it was game 5. Did well. They lost. That sucks. You move on, chalk it up for what it is. I think this is a series that's going to play more to his advantages. And I think that Miami series, if and when that happens, or the Knicks, I think Grant is going to be necessary because you want another body that you can throw out there. And especially if Philly starts to play with pace, you're going to want to have Grant in there too. I think preserving Al as much as he can to when you need him or when the game starts to slow down makes a lot of sense. Al is going to definitely be important for stretching the floor as he always is. And I think giving Grant these opportunities where you can give them to him, I think needs to happen. Because other than that, it's mind boggling to me that like this is a guy who was a major part of the rotation that's not getting any kind of significant run now. And I don't think that's right. I don't know what the motivation is behind that. If it's just maybe it's not a commentary on Grant, maybe it's more of a commentary on the other guys and how well they're doing. But I want to see Grant get some time because I think he's deserved it. And I think there's going to be certain times and moments in this matchup where you're going to want to turn to him. And I'm hoping that they do.
Yeah. The Celtics are gonna come out on fire. I just got this funny feeling. And you're gonna see a great rotation of the players. The rotation is still gonna be short. Don't get it twisted. It's still gonna be playoff rotation for Coach Mazzulla. But I guess my expectations. I'm not saying that they're set super duper high. My expectations is just that the Celtics do the right thing. No pun intended. But that's what they have to come out here and do. And you know what it's like when the Celtics play Celtics basketball. I think the whole world does. I mean, even Chuck and all those guys, they know when we're just not playing right. They know when we're playing off, we're playing ISO ball, we're playing hero ball, whatever you want to call it. They know. We know. Everybody knows. And look, I expect Jaylen Brown to take advantage of his matchups. If there's any mismatches, Tatum, if there's any mismatches, those two guys I'm okay with. And we're not even talking about like how great Marcus Smart has just like turned it up a little bit, right? He turned the clicker on the stove up a little bit higher, and he's making better plays. And so maybe that 7-game series against Atlanta got something going with the Celtics. I know it was, I mean, 6-game series, I'm sorry, got something going with the Celtics. They had to figure out a way to overcome whatever the adversity it was against the Atlanta Hawks, and now they feel like maybe they're just getting into their rhythm, maybe they're getting into their stride. And going in with a possibly 76ers and beadless type of a team, if I'm the Celtics, I'm full sailing on these mother suckers, yo. Like, I'm going in there like, hey, man, I'm sorry he hurt, but we got to go out here and do our thing. You're like, you know what I mean? And so that's what I'm hoping we get from the Boston Celtics in this whole series, not just game one, but the whole series. Don't run out of gas in game one, but give it enough gas to where you secure that win for the fans of Boston.
Yeah, capitalize on those minutes where you don't have Embiid on the floor. I think that's the biggest thing. And it was what you wanted the Celtics to do in game 5 when they didn't have DeJounte Murray for the Hawks. You wanted them to capitalize on it, and they failed to do so. I think this situation is a little bit different because as good as James Harden is, I think he took a massive step back. He got hurt when he played with the Nets, and he hasn't been the same guy since then. And without Joel Embiid out there, you lose that threat of the pick and roll. It's just not the same with all the other guys out there on the floor as opposed to the Harden Embiid pick and roll. So I think that's going to hurt them. And I think Embiid was capable of punishing a pick and roll with the pick and pop. We talked about that. He's got that nice little mid range jumper. So if you're not able to lean on that, I think that this is a really great opportunity for the Celtics to try and get out early, you know, get a good healthy lead in game 1, close that game out solidly, take care of business at home, go go back to Philly up 2-0. And, I called it before. I think it's going to be a 5-game series, and I think the Celtics take it. If it's sweep happens, the sweep happens. But I try and be respectful because I think that Joel Embiid is going to have one of those games where, whatever it may be, Samson, the Samson strength, he just comes in and just takes a game and just puts the team on his back. I think that's entirely possible. I just don't know how likely it is with his injury, but you can't rule it out. But I think this is going to be a good series. And, I think after the Hawks series, this is a matchup that I think just plays better for the Celtics, in my opinion. But yeah.
I agree. I got Celtics in 5 as well. I believe there's just that one game where they're kind of, and it won't be these games. If that one game the Celtics probably will lose, it'll still come down to the end. That's what the Celtics and the 76ers, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a down to the wire type of game, probably just about in every game. But the Celtics, again, capitalize on what you can. Make the 76ers have to work that much harder to defend you guys. And so that's what the Celtics need to do. That should be their game plan. They go out there. Malcolm Brogdon needs to have a great game coming in off the bench, relieving minutes, being the sixth man of the year, which is what he's been doing throughout the whole season and in the playoffs. I think he had like one game in the playoffs where he just kind of wasn't himself. I don't expect that tonight from Malcolm Brogdon. And again, those that get those rotational minutes, whoever those players are, just come in, do what you got to do. I got the Celtics in 5.
And with that, I think we'll wrap up this episode. Again, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. And we'll catch you next time, hopefully after a nice game 1. Cheers.
Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook.